Hey guys, and welcome to our official unboxing and review of Dreadfleet, the new pirate game from Games Workshop.
Everyone gotta love pirates.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. And everybody knows I love pirates. So anyway, we've had a little bit of time to spend with Dreadfleet. I've even taken it home and played a game because it's kind of in one of those strange places between war game and board game. It's not necessarily a board game, but at the same time, I wouldn't consider it a war game because it's an all-in-one box.
Yeah, there's
type
nothing
thing.
else you can bring into the game.
No, so the only way I can think of calling it is a big box game. So I'm going to show you the sprues. We'll talk a bit about the background. We'll talk a little bit about how the game works. In my own testing of it, I took it home and I introduced it to my partner, Andrea, because this is how we test our board games and things here. You know, something like this, chances are, if you're picking this up, you're picking it up to play at home.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, there'll be clubs and stuff will pick it up as well, but most likely you're buying this to play at home with a few mates or with your other half or whatever. Yeah. So I thought, you know what, I will try it as that because I know if I'm buying it, I would have bought it to play at home.
Just get a few beers and wage a little high-sea battle. You know,
Exactly.
typical Saturday night.
So during this review, I'll let you know how we got on with that. But anyway, you can see the box. In general, Andrea was very impressed with the box. And I have to admit, the production quality on this has been top-notch. I often go on about my Space Hulk, and I decided to take Space Hulk out and compare the books and things like that there. And this is much, much higher quality even than Space Hulk.
One complaint, I think the book binding, I think it'll come loose if it's well used for a while. That is not the best quality binding I've seen from Games Workshop, in my opinion.
I can't comment because it hasn't come apart on me yet. And we have worked with, for example, the Fantasy Rules, the big red book, and it came apart very quickly. This hasn't come apart on me yet. But anyway, let's crack it open. So you've got that lovely artwork from John Blanche. A lot of people, you know, they run hot and cold on John Blanche, but I've got to tell you, this project was made for John Blanche and his artwork. The artwork is absolutely gorgeous. I'll just put it under there. You've seen it all before anyway, guys, but it looks fantastic. This is one of the problems I had with it, because I took it all home to build all the models, and I basically wanted to get them built in an afternoon or an evening so as I could play a game that night. And it was pretty heavy going. There's a number, like there's 10 warships and a bunch of little bits and pieces of terrain, islands, shipwrecks, sea monsters, and what's called treasure.
These guys.
Little treasure things which are easy enough to clip because you're just clipping them out. Let me just get them on there. And then you have your other tokens and measuring devices. However, rather than put a booklet into the box, which shows you how it all goes together, they printed it around the outside of the box, which I have to admit was the biggest pain in the ass in the world. I mean,
I believe it.
Total pain in the ass. Because you're sitting with your parts in the box, you're working off the lid, and you're looking back and forth, and I had to pull at least a couple of models, definitely this one here, which was called...
That's the Bloody Reaver.
The Bloody Reaver. I had to pull the Bloody Reaver apart twice just to make sure the parts go together in it. So let's kick off by showing you what you've got. When I originally did this with Andy, we did our, oh my God, box is just in. Let's split it open to see what it is. This was the first sprue to come out of the box. And as you can see, it's enormous. So my first initial thoughts was, well, hang on a second. Sprues like that, of that size, all had come out of China before. They'd come out of GW Shanghai. However, we've done a little bit of digging, and people have reached out to us to let us know that none of the contents of this box was done in GW Shanghai. Which, well, when I say, if you watch the original review, I think it's probably slipped back into backstage now. You'll see I'll bring this out and I confidently say, ha ha! It's been produced in China. Then about halfway through, I'm looking at these and seeing the details on them and going, hang on a second. No, this looks like it's been produced in-house in Lenton. So, it wasn't produced in China. It was all done in-house. So, Sam, if you hold that, I'm going to talk you guys through some of the sprue. So, kicking off, let me just get that under the close cam there. We have these 3 bits here, okay? And they are basically the ruler, okay? Now they clip together and into this shape here. You can see that it bends like that. Now, it gives you a shape like this, or you can go straight, okay? Now, it's useful for a number of things. First, you can use it to measure the distance that your ships go. So you put your ship down, and then you measure from front to front. However, what it also is useful for is working out the arcs for the line of fire, or the line of sight for your warships.
Whether they're in your port side arc, or if you've got them in, whether you've got their aft in view.
Now, because here's the thing, you fire your cannons from the sides. They're called broadsides. You broadside from either side, okay? So you want to make sure that any ship you're trying to broadside, the majority of its base is within that arc. Yeah. So it's a nice multi-purpose little tool. My only regret is that they didn't have 2 in the box.
Yes, I could understand that. It's definitely a very imaginative way of getting a measuring system for this. It's much better than any just bunging out an old tape measure.
I think so. You know, it is in keeping with the game. It's kind of smart how they've built it, that you can use it not only for measuring but also for working out your line of sight. Also, you work out whether the wind is in your aft or to your front. So there's a lot that you can do with it. So it's a very nicely thought out piece. You just should have put another one in the box so as that we wouldn't have to pass it back and forth. But hey, you know, you're playing with family and friends, you can learn to share and share alike.
A little domestic over who got the measuring stick.
Exactly. So the rest of this sprue, this particular sprue, it contains basically most, if not all, of the terrain pieces that you sail around. So you've got these little islands. These are the little caps for your little buildings that are built up onto the main island, which is here.
Completed one,
and I can show you a completed one. So that's what it looks like once it's complete. There are lots of skulls, but you know, what do you expect? It is set in the Warhammer world, but it's not set on the seas of the Warhammer world. It's kind of like a netherworld.
It's set in an undead sea realm that you get to by going through a vortex of, guess what? Skulls.
A vortex of skulls. It had to be skulls. On this, you also have shipwrecks. Just pull them in there. So there's your shipwrecks and all the other bits and pieces of land. I've no doubt you've seen the majority of it, if not all of it, by now. The other side, you have these little devices here. Again, very useful little devices. If I pull one over that we've clipped already, this is used to determine the change of direction of your ship. In any one turn, the game mechanics have been worked out beautifully. I've got to admit, I'm a massive fan of how Phil's wrote this. It was written by Phil Kelly, and Phil, you did a great job. The idea is you can make a movement up to 45 degrees. So you place that there on your ship, and then you can turn your ship either the full 45 degrees or any part thereof, but you can't go over 45 degrees. And again, it's just a really nice little handy thing. You know, get something like that for Warhammer, for wheeling, and that would have been that
would be a great time saver.
It would have been a massive time saver. So that's what you've got on that sprue. I'll just set that to one side. And then you move down to these smaller sprues. My beautiful assistant Sam has helped me with this. And then these sprues contain the parts of the actual warships themselves. So one of the things I want to point out is this is a Hydra.
The Bone Hydra.
Bone Hydra. And he's one of the actual sea monsters. Now, sea monsters kind of just sit and do their own thing until Count Noctilus can take control of them himself, so they can become an additional enemy.
Yeah, each of the captains has their own special ability. With Count Noctilus, it's that instead of doing a normal order, he can take control of one of these sea monsters, counting them as an auxiliary.
Yeah.
So they go under his control for a little while.
So let me explain. I'll show you some of the parts on this sprue. Here we have the main one side of the hull of the Heldenhammer, and the other side of it is round on this side. And then also on this one we have the Blood Reaver. So the Blood Reaver actually comes in 4 or 5 parts that all go together, because the backstory of the Blood Reaver is it's not a ship, it's kind of like a collection of wrecked ships that have come together to form this massive dead flotilla.
He just took his castle, put it in the middle of the sea, and then stuck a lot of ships around it.
That's pretty much it. Over here we have what are called auxiliaries. Now, auxiliaries are little small ships, okay? The Blood Reaver has them and the Heldenhammer has them. So there's an auxiliary for the Heldenhammer, and then here's a auxiliary for the Blood Reaver. So let me tell you a little bit about these. These main capital class warships, if they drop anchor or they've run aground, which is very easy to do in this game.
If you don't keep an eye on the wind or anything.
You've got to be careful with that. If they've run aground or if they've dropped anchor, they can release what are called auxiliaries. And these are little tiny ships that can move around. They're very, very agile. They don't have any limitations on how much they move. So therefore, they don't run aground. But what they can do is pick up treasure and bring that treasure back to the actual main capital ship. Now, not all the auxiliaries are actually floating auxiliaries as well. The Dwarf Steam Warship has this little kind of dirigible, kind of like a balloon. And then there's this kind of, I suppose it's like an elven warship, and it's a kind of a dragon that's connected to that one as well. And they fly.
Here's the ship it's from. Got the other dragon mounted on the back.
There you go.
Caused a lot of havoc with that.
So, you have these warships, and as I show you through some of these others, a lot of the warships are sailing ships. So in other words, they have sails, just like this one here. Other warships actually don't have sails. They're like this one is a kind of like
the Scabrous.
Scabrous. It's a sea monster of some sort that's rotting and decaying. And the Skaven, the rat men, live inside this, probably gnawing away at the bones and the rotting flesh of this. Here we have another one. Sam, what do you want to call this one?
I've forgotten its name. Noctilus, I think it is. No, that's the name of the vampire.
Yep, you can check it up on the cards.
It's the Black Kraken.
The Black Kraken. The Black Kraken is a kind of a, I don't know, it's a kraken, again. And the beauty of it is, there's a really nice dynamic in this game.
Here's its card.
This is where it can be submerged. So you can have the Black Kraken submerged in the game, and you just move this card around, and then whenever you want to produce your Black Kraken, you can do a roll and it can appear something like anywhere within D6 plus 10 inches or something like that.
Rises majestically out of the deeps to eat.
So it can give you that element of surprise. In terms of the game mechanics, let me talk you a little bit through the game. So the game has a number of phases. The first thing that you do is you roll for, you do a roll for kind of authority. It's like an authority roll. It's basically a roll to see who goes first. So let me just pull up these details so as I can give you an idea of how the game plays.
They use a similar mechanic in Eldorado, I think, to that.
Yep. So you're rolling for initiative first, which is basically just a roll-off between you and your opponent. And whoever scores highest in the initiative can choose whether they go first or go second. Nice and easy. That keeps the flow of the game kind of changing, which I think is great. It's a lovely mechanic in tabletop games these days.
Each full turn, you take it turnabout to move your ships as well.
Well, the next phase is called the status phase, and that's where you work out things like some of these ships can have lasting effects, like they can be on fire. They can have other kinds of effects that need to be resolved during this status phase.
Here's some of them. The set ablaze and
this
that
is
anchor.
A set ablaze marker.
And if you turn it over?
And on the other side you have the at anchor. Now there are reasons why you'd want to anchor your ship. One is to release those little auxiliaries, because if you try to release them while you're not at anchor, you have to do a test for each one that you release to see if it capsizes. The next thing we have is the fate stage. Okay, this is the phase 3, and basically whoever's going first draws a fate card, and then they apply whatever it says on that fate card. This one says grape shot loaded. The crew have loaded buckshot and blades into their cannons. Discard this card when the warship fires its next broadside. Once that broadside has been resolved, the target draws damage cards until it draws a crew damage card, applying it and discarding the rest. Then the other player draws their fate card, and it says fire ship ready. So one of the things that I have to point out on these cards are two little numbers. Let's start with this one here. If we can get you to see that. That is the wind direction notification, and that is fascinating. It's a really, really nice dynamic that's been added to this game. So basically in the box you have your marker for wind, and it starts round this edge of the actual play area.
Start of the game, you roll 2 dice to find out whereabouts you put it on the border.
And around the edge of the actual play area, you will see this yellow band. And here we have 6-6, and then a little bit further down, we have 6-5. And that continues all the way around the entire play area. So after you've rolled your 2d6, you can find out where it starts. So for example, 1-3 is located here in front of me. When you read this, it says 3 in a clockwise direction. So before the game begins, or whenever you lift the fate card, the first thing you do is move that 1, 2, 3. Then you apply whatever it says on your fate card. Then when your opponent lifts their fate card, and it might say 3, 2, 1, 5, you move it again. And that gives you this constant change of wind direction, which when you consider that you are fighting in the maelstrom of the galleon's graveyard, I think it's a really nice mechanic. Others might think it's a bit random. I don't think it's too random. I think that there's enough scope within your control of the actual sailing ships, because these do have an effect on your sailing ships, but I think there's enough scope within your control of those ships for it not to be considered too random. These fate cards are placed on a discarded pile face up, and then that other little number comes into play, and it says number 2, and that is your wind speed. So let me give you an example. Here we have the Heldenhammer, okay? If the Heldenhammer has the wind behind it, it has a nice option. First, it has to move, during that move, the minimum amount of the wind speed. So if the wind speed is 5 inches, then during its move, it needs to move at least that 5 inches.
Even if that would bring it up on ground or into another ship.
Or even off the board altogether. If it's to the fore, it's called what is basically locked in irons when the ship, when the wind is coming from the front. Your captain basically takes what's effectively a leadership test or a command test. And if he passes the command test, it shows that he has the skill to be able to negotiate the ship through those headward winds, and he doesn't pay any penalty. However, if he fails it, then his move is reduced by 2 inches or whatever the current wind speed is. So if it's behind you, you have to move minimum that distance during your turn, and you also get to add that optionally to your movement. So if your movement is 10 inches, if you have a 5-inch wind behind you, you can move 15. Up to 15.
It allows for you to really change your tactics to take advantage of what's going on around you.
And it also can come into play because you could set up this beautiful boarding maneuver where you've finally got your ship round, ready to come into the side of one of the enemy vessels, but you could find that the wind suddenly turns in their favor, and they're away past and able to turn, and suddenly you're in their arc of fire, and you could get decimated.